Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is. Welcome to the present moment and this week's episode of the Alter Your Health podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Benjamin Alter. This podcast is your source of information and inspiration to promote the holistic transformation of your health and the health of our planet. It's all about health on this podcast, and it's all about holistic health, like truly living holistically aligned with nature, not only for your health, but like I said, the health of our planet, our community, our globe. And this week's episode is really, inspirational. I'm talking this week with our guest, Robbie Balenger. He is a 34-year-old plant-based ultra-endurance athlete. And just a couple months ago, on May 29th, 2019, he completed a run across the United States of America, 3,175 miles in 75 days. He was really clipping along the country, and I actually followed his journey all along the way on Instagram. And you can find Robbie on Instagram at Robbie Balenger. And this transcontinental run, this 3,175 mile run across the continent, was a mission, a plant-powered mission to promote the benefits and raise awareness of the benefits, the myriad of benefits that have to do with a plant-based lifestyle when it comes to individual health, our community health, of course, the health of our planet, and let's face it, the health of our animals on this planet and animal liberation. So all of these things are part of Robbie's plant-powered mission. You can find out more about this plant-powered mission at www.plantpoweredmission.com. And before we dive into this incredible conversation with Robbie, this inspiring talk that we had, I just want to share with you some other inspiring and really exciting stuff happening at Alter Health. As some of you might know, myself and my wife and partner and love, Dr. Susanna Alter, we offer holistic lifestyle medicine consultations around the world online. And you can find out more at www.alter.health. But one of the things that we are so very excited about right now is our medicinal living online course that launched just a couple weeks ago. And this course is really a deep dive into the science and the deep understanding of how to live a healthy life, really guiding you along the way through taking action steps when it comes to food, when it comes to hydration, when it comes to movement, and all sorts of other really important practices having to do with keeping yourself healthy in this world. So if you are just starting a health journey, if you have just been diagnosed with some condition and you are seeking natural guidance, or maybe you're just wanting to optimize the health in your life, the life in your years, then I would strongly suggest that you check out this course, www.alter.health/course, to find out more information on medicinal living. And listeners of this podcast, of course, you get a special deal specifically for you. Don't share this code with anyone else. Actually, I'm just kidding. You can share this if you want, and also share this podcast, right? But listeners of this show get 20% off using the code ALTERYOURHEALTH when you check out. Once again, www.alter.health/course with the code ALTERYOURHEALTH for 20% off. And before we dive in, another reminder, if it is your first time stopping through, or maybe you just haven't taken the 10 or 20 seconds yet to subscribe and rate and review this podcast, leaving a comment or some feedback wherever you're tuning in from. I do really, truly appreciate it. And thank you for your time. I do really acknowledge that we live in this world that we are constantly bombarded with all sorts of information. So I appreciate you for focusing and tuning in to this wonderful conversation, as well as the other wonderful conversations that do take place regularly on the Alter Your Health podcast. So I'm really excited to dive into this one with our guest, Robbie Balenger. Once again, the plant-powered ultra-endurance athlete who just completed his plant-powered mission. But this plant-powered mission has really just begun when we're talking about, raising awareness and spreading information on the benefits of living a plant-based lifestyle. So go ahead and ground yourself, put your feet on the ground, take a breath, or maybe, focus on the road. Wherever you are, be here now and enjoy this conversation with our guest, Robbie Balenger. All right. Hey there, Robbie. Welcome to the Alter Your Health podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Super excited to dive in and get to know you a little bit, get to know about this journey that you just wrapped up. I guess it's been like a couple months now.
Yeah, it's been a little over 2 months. I finished up running across the country.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, 3,175 miles. I left from Huntington Beach, just south of LA, and finished in Central Park, New York City.
Wow. Yeah. So definitely want to know how that went. But I guess before we dive into that journey, take me back a little ways to, what kind of inspired it. And, you talk about it being really a plant-powered mission, a mission to, raise advocacy around plant-based living. But how about, running? Take me back to your history in running. When did you start running, and when did you start really getting into the ultra super huge distance and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my running career, my running in general started only about 6 years ago. I was in the restaurant industry my whole life and had just taken on a new career move and was helping to open what ended up right away being very successful Neapolitan pizzerias. And as we opened the doors, my lifestyle, it became clear, was not one that was going to allow me to take on this added responsibilities that were being thrusted upon me and things that I was really looking forward to. I was living kind of a very traditional restaurant industry lifestyle, which was to work hard and then go out at night and relieve stress through alcohol, partying, and all of those good things. Good things is, I guess, debatable. It was a lot of fun, but it just wasn't working for me. And I had recently started a new relationship, and the girl I was seeing, she invited me out on a run. We made it 2.5 miles and stopped for a juice at the local Daily Juice in Austin. And then I got a cab home. It was all I could do, but it stuck. The idea, the feelings, what it gave me, it was quickly really clear that this was such a healthy way to get through the stresses, the frustrations, get clarity of mind. And I started to fiend for it. And within 3 months, I ran my first half marathon. The following year, I ran the Philly Marathon. Just a couple of chance encounters. One of the bigger things being coming up to Colorado. Again, we were living in Austin at the time, and happened upon the beginning stages of building up for the weekend of the Hard Rock, which is a 100-mile race up in the San Juan Mountains. It's one of the most challenging ultra endurance feats out there. And showing up and just happenstance to be there the weekend that this was occurring, I was introduced and saw all of these amazing ultra athletes, and it resonated with the type of man I was hoping to become. And it had a sense of kind of hardcoreness that I had wrapped up in this like partying lifestyle. And I was looking for a different way to express a lot of these things that I wanted to become, and was getting out of one, kind of persona into a new, I don't know. And that's what started it. So from there, I went home and started to look up what ultras I could do, and found a 50-miler in Northeast Georgia. That's where I grew up. And over the next 5 or 6 months, I trained up for that, competed in another marathon, 50K, and then on to that race. So that started my ultra career, I guess.
Wow. So that was just 6 years ago. The first run, the 2.5-mile run with the girl in Austin was just 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So before then, it's not like you were a track or cross country kind of guy. Did you have a sport growing up, or were you kind of sedentary?
No, growing up, I played team sports. In high school, really settling into football, I was actually an offensive lineman. I was, I was a little thicker than I am now. But and once that ended, I traveled. I was living down up in Alaska and then in the Virgin Islands after a failed college attempt. And through that, I was somewhat active. I had gained a lot of weight when I was in those first few years of college, again, through probably a lot of the cheap beer and partying lifestyle, and also a lot of fast food. And I remember in that time period, though, about the time I decided to let go of studies at college and move to Alaska, I saw Super Size Me. And it started this catalyst for change in my life to where I noticed it. That was the first time I'd ever contemplated the food we put into our body directly affects the outcome. And it wasn't something, again, that happened overnight. It was just, oh, wow, that's a thing. And then from moving to Alaska, there were no fast food options. And I started moving my body a lot more. So I was active. And then by the time I made it to Austin and started into this restaurant career, I rode bikes. I was into fixed gear cycling, but nothing serious, nothing that was keeping me accountable. I was able to get out and do things, but a lot of those rides on bikes were just from bar to bar. So it came a little bit later.
Yeah, that's what fixies are good for.
Exactly. Yeah, just being like a young thug, and yeah, that was just kind of part of it. It was just
yeah. Well, I'm trying to understand. Like it sounds like you just went all in then to the running. So did you have that sort of all in personality in some way before, or did it just get ignited when you went on that run? Were you kind of all in into your entrepreneurial, pizzeria journey? Is that kind of the way you operate?
I'm an all or nothing kind of person for sure. And that was kind of where all of this ended up coming to a head. Was I was all in on the restaurants, and I was putting a lot of stress on myself and overworking myself. And looking back in retrospect, I see that a lot of these were my choices, and a lot of it came from a place of somewhat low self-esteem, I think. And in that, I wasn't good at delegating to the rest of the employees around me, and I was just taking things on. And eventually this kind of broke, and I found that it wasn't sustainable for me. And at that time I decided to leave the restaurants. And then upon doing that, the girlfriend that I went on the run with is now my fiance. We moved up to Denver together. And for her to go to nursing school, she just finished up a accelerated bachelor's program up here. And it left me in this place where I got to redefine who I was and what I wanted to do with my life. And I took some conscious time to try to figure this out. And I, through this, decided that environmentalism was something that really mattered to me. And moving up here, I also was running a good bit more. I had the time to do it. And in this process, we were cleaning up our diet. Coming out of a restaurant, it was the first time I had the ability to choose my food all the time instead of just eating at the restaurant. And we went vegetarian. We had been vegetarian at home in the years prior, but out and about, it wasn't really a focus of mine. But we did that as soon as we moved to Denver, and then started to clean it up even more and more, finding that the more I left out animal products, that being dairy, eggs, and meat, the quicker my recovery time was for these runs, and my weight was regulating. And then the environmental implications came in. I started to do a little bit of research to find, man, as an individual, one of the biggest things I could do is adopt this plant-based lifestyle, and was thinking about doing solar or possibly wildland firefighting to mitigate the damages of global warming and seeing this environmental crisis we have in front of us. But then one thing led to another, and I started to formulate this idea of running across the country to promote a plant-based lifestyle. And with that, it made me become extremely accountable to my food choices. And that was with that decision did we go completely plant-based, understanding that I'm going to have to walk the walk if I was going to talk the talk. And it ended up being the only way I was able to accomplish the goal was by the plant-based diet. It had a lot to do with my success.
Yeah, awesome. I definitely look forward to hearing more about how that supported you. So like the plant-based inspiration seemed to have come around the same time as the ultra running did.
No, ultra running started first for sure. My first 50 miler and came probably in 2015 or 16, I believe. And I was still eating just a regular diet, carnivore diet. I would go out on long runs and then be famished afterwards and crush a cheeseburger. And then the next day be really sore and didn't understand why. Yeah. So it came a little bit later. It came with this more, it was that's moved to Denver and this realigning everything in my life with things that mattered to me and passions. And with that was where we found the plant-based lifestyle. And that was when I realized though that I could be a little more than your average weekend warrior ultra runner. I with the recovery time becoming less and less, I was able to train harder and harder. And it's not everybody that goes out and does, back-to-back 20, 25-mile runs day after day for a couple days.
So you had the experience then from going from, an omnivorous diet. You said carnivore, but I'm assuming it wasn't like the carnivore as we know it today.
No.
Oh my gosh. So you were going from like an omnivorous diet to, you had the experience of going from that sort of diet to a plant-based diet while being an ultra runner. And it sounds like doing so really led you to improved recovery you were talking about. But how was your performance in your races and that sort of stuff?
I sped up quite a bit.
Really?
Yeah, I think,
Do you think it
let's
had to do
see.
with you like slimming down? Did that happen the same?
Mhm.
But then again, I guess I've never really seen an ultra runner who is not pretty slim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of where I equate, I did get faster. My ability to, take on, a lot about ultra running is again going back to that, like in training, is back to back long runs, and a lot of the things that hold people back from that is soreness and depletion. And with this diet, I didn't have the soreness. I was really easy to get in the calories needed, the cleaner my diet was. So I began to normalize longer distances. That had a lot to do with what ended up being the decision to take on, what averaged out to 43 miles a day for 75 days. Was I got to where the idea of a 25-mile run was just like a daily, it was just the thing I could do. And then I just kept pushing that further and further. And that came with the plant-based diet. And then performance-wise too, I got faster. I did. Never been one to do speed workouts. And in that I've only been running 6 years, it's always been that I kept going longer and longer instead of trying to get faster and faster. But my mom randomly signed me up for a half marathon in San Antonio. That's where she lives. And I went home to visit her, and she's like, "Surprise, you're running a half marathon this weekend." I said, "Okay." And I went out and I ran like a sub 130, which is a big marker for runners. It's like, "Oh, wow, you're fast under that." And again, I'd never done a speed workout. And the only thing I had changed at that point was the diet. And I was doing more mileage, but the more mileage was only possible because of the diet.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the diet, because obviously we kind of know what a plant-based diet is, fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, and um, but you said that you found that it was easy to get the calories that you need. Sometimes I feel like it's actually challenging to get the calories that I need if I'm burning a lot. So what are the foods that are staples in your, plant-based diet? I'm assuming that you're probably eating more calories than the average
Yeah.
than the average, human out there who's not running 43 miles a day.
Yeah. Well, pertaining to the run itself, when I did that, that was 8,000 calories a day. So I was eating 11 times a day, a lot of food. But in general, in life, the reason I'd say I found it easier to get the calories is it just was easier on my system. 100-mile weeks. At that point, you're needing to put in a lot of extra calories than the average sedentary person. And it was just easier. It felt better. I felt cleaner. I was able to put in that stuff. And for me, a big start to the day is hydrating early, cup of coffee, and then we at home we dig right into a smoothie. And our smoothies are, I think, is what really sets me up for success for the rest of the day. I find that powdered peanut butter goes a long way. It's a lot easier to blend into smoothies. A Vitamix is a really important part of the equation as well. But yeah, from there it's just veggies. We put in a lot of carrots, kale, and bananas. I eat a lot of bananas. And then, for the run, we added a lot of coconut milk, getting good fats in there, avocados, things of that nature. And that's kind of how I set my day in motion. And then from there throughout the day, it's just a whole food, plant-based diet. Really, kale, there's a lot of protein there, interestingly, or enough. A lot of the big questions from people that are transitioning or skeptical about a plant-based diet is this protein thing. And
Mm-hmm.
what I found through my research and now through my performance and everything else is that this protein fad is a little out of control.
Totally.
If you're eating well, there's plenty of protein available. The average American right now is eating about double the protein that they need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we are in a protein excess epidemic, and everyone's,
yeah,
it's like the first thing that people look at on their protein bar or whatever it is. Oh, it's like, oh, 30 grams of protein. It must be good for me.
yeah, it's like we're already overindulging, and then everybody's still fiending for more. And
Yeah.
it's like it's a lot. It's too much.
So when you shifted to your plant-based fuel for your running, do you have any sort of like initial cravings, or did you feel like you were missing something? Like,
There were things that were hard to give up. I came again from had spent the better part of the last 6 years working at a Neapolitan pizzeria. Mozzarella was the center of my diet. And, that was something psychologically that was hard to give up. But when you start to feel the effects of the lack of these things, it makes it really easy to stay away from it and I don't really crave any of those things anymore. I have found over the last, year and a half or so of exploring this diet, every now and then I'll have a craving. I don't know if that's really a word, or like steak or something will pop into my mind. And what I've found is it usually means I'm a little bit deficient on iron or something of that nature, and just find something, to alleviate that, even if it's just an iron supplement for the day. And it's just listening to your body and using these cues, these little, when you get a craving, usually if you're eating cleanly, there's usually a reason for it. You should think it through and kind of break down what that might be. And we're pretty intuitive if you allow yourself to be.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely one of my philosophies as well, is listening to the body. And I think that people get the craving, for example, a sugar craving,
Mhm.
and just go to a candy bar or something, when in fact a sugar craving is a fuel craving, a
Yeah,
craving for fuel. And obviously a candy bar provides that to some extent, but not in the optimal way that the body really desires. So
exactly.
that's great that you've developed that attunement to your symptoms and your cravings, and able to kind of fuel yourself, maintaining that plant-based mindset and lifestyle. So yeah, so I want to shift to the big run. What, like you talked about, it was inspired from this kind of activism
Mhm.
perspective. Where did that come from?
Uh, you know, Coming out of the restaurant industries, I realized that I had been living a pretty selfish life, and I had continued in this career that was burning me out, and a lot of it just had to do with financial security. And coming out of it, I was planning to like I said, I took some time to decide what I wanted to do next. But in that, right, coming like the day I left the restaurant, I had a ticket planned for 2 days later, and I was going to head to Southeast Asia and just take some time for myself to explore and just decompress. But on the heels of the decision to leave, the hurricanes that devastated the Caribbean, like year before last, hit. And as I said earlier, I lived down in the Caribbean for a while. I lived on St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And Hurricane Irma absolutely destroyed the community for which I was still very much engaged with. Some good friends still live down there. And everything that they had was gone, and they were left with nothing. And I decided that instead of going to the Southeast Asia, I was going to take a trip down there with a relief effort. And I showed up right about 2 months after the storms hit, and the devastation was profound. It felt to me that it was really, those storms were a little out of control. They were bigger than they should have been. And my takeaway was that Mother Nature was pretty pissed off. And that started this deep desire to get into environmentalism and to change the focus of my life to service instead of just being so self-centered. And then it was just, how do I do that? What do I do? And again, there was the ideas of solar or getting into wildland firefighting. But with all those things, there was the selfish part of me that kept saying, well, when do you get to run? If you're doing that, when's the running? When's the running? And I took a trip down to the Copper Canyon. For any runners out there, or even non-runners may have picked up the book at some time, Born to Run. And it's this story of the Tarahumara Indians and how they're able to run really long distances. And it focuses on this race that happens in the Copper Canyon in northern Mexico. I went down for that race. And when I was down there, I realized that this culture just really inspired me, that there was a purity to it. And there was also this little small group of gringos that were down there who came down every year for the race. And none of them were elite athletes, but they had found a way to make running the center of their life. And that really appealed to me. And one of the guys was a guy I met named Patrick Sweeney. And we had a very small little interaction, but in that he told me he ran across the country in 2015. And it resonated with me. I just kind of sized him up and realized he was just a guy just like me. And when I came home, I was impressed by it. And I knew I knew when he told me the way that I was so overtaken by, oh, wow, like that's huge. There was something in that impact that you could have from such a big undertaking could be leveraged for good. And so right away it was, well, what would I want to do if I was running across the country? Well, I would do it to promote better food choices, and the reason for that being fueled by environmentalism. The closer we come to a plant-based diet, the more as individuals we're helping with this environmental crisis in front of us. So those things just started to formulate, and that's how it came to be as an idea. And from there, it was, how do I make it happen? I need to bring on partners. I need to find a way to fund this. And I started reaching out after building a proposal, and found Nadamu Dairy-Free Ice Cream, who has been my sponsor throughout all of this. And then from there, together, we coined the Plant-Powered Mission. And over the next year, I trained, showed up at a bunch of races, and ran races to kind of help normalize the distance and to promote what I was about to do. And then on March 16th of this year, a year and a day from the day I decided I wanted to do this, I took off from Huntington Beach. And that was kind of how it came to be. And then one foot in front of the other for 75 days and 14 states, all the good stuff.
Wow. So you were at this race down in Mexico just a year before?
But yeah, a year. So I was down there, it was at the beginning of March. And then I came back from the race. And on March 15th was when I was out for my first run after coming back from Mexico. And that's when I decided to do it.
Wow. So you manifested that opportunity with the support and also that focus and that strength and that endurance in a year, in a day.
Yeah, year and a day.
You're just like, boom, let's do this. Wow. Yeah. That's pretty impressive. I feel like some people, like other people might, that, planted the seed there a year ago and then maybe get reminded a year later, but you were like, that lit something inside of you and you listened to that.
Totally. And I was a little lost too. I was hungry for what I was going to do next. And there were all these ideas, but every one of them, I wasn't feeling that it was something I was completely passionate about. And when I just thought of this, I felt passionate right off the bat. And I knew that the more we align our passions, the more you can align your passions, the more of a stance you can make and more of a, the more powerful your message is going to be. So it just felt like it was the thing to do. And it was one of those things that it was so monumental and so big that if I was going to do it, you just got to make up your mind. And it's time to just all focus and not taking no for an answer and just start putting, again, one foot in front of the other. That really kind of became the mantra throughout so much of this.
So it seemed like it was an environmental kind of impetus to launch you in this direction. And then you realized, this like plant-based diet actually fuels me much better. It actually allows me to recover better and, cover more distances in less time. But where, from the environmental perspective, like you were talking about the hurricane down in the Bahamas and stuff like that. When were you introduced to the idea that maybe, a plant-based lifestyle and cutting out meat, fish, dairy, and eggs and that sort of thing would support the environment? Because I think that that's something that's still, there's been a lot of great documentaries and people raising awareness of that, but there's still a lot of skeptics around there when it comes to environmentalism and a vegan sort of lifestyle.
Yeah, I don't remember any, what was the poignant article I read or what documentary it was. I mean, the ones that I think really stick out would be Cowspiracy and What the Health by Keegan Kuhn. Those two I think are really good at kind of laying it out. I don't know that they were the ones that initially did it for me. I do read a lot. I don't know exactly where, but I definitely came to a strong sense that was something that was important and it was worth talking about. Yeah, and probably a New York Times article or two. And now I think, just today, I think the New York Times just dropped something that there's more conclusive evidence that the meat industry is what's just devastating to Amazon. And it's one of the bigger contributors to overall environmental just degradation in general. So yeah, I'm not sure what the exact moment, the poignant article or piece of information was.
But it just kept you moving in this direction. There was like, all things came together, like you were saying. I like what you said about, aligning your passions. Like you have this environmental passion, this running passion, this, activism,
Yeah. And food too. Like I had been exploring food for a very long time. And, another part I think for me in making the transition for my own personal health, but also environmental reasons. And then what ended up being, now there's an ethical, aspect to it as well. But it was going to, because I was so food centric, I have been for so long being in the restaurant industry and especially at a higher level. Because I say these pizzerias, but these restaurants are fantastic. Like anyone in Austin, Texas or around, Bufalina Pizza, they'll tell you it's fantastic. We were really, putting the best ingredients we could forth to our product. But in that I'd been exploring food. I had been even up to the point of like really fine dining and Michelin star restaurant experiences, but coming to this new conclusion and wanting to experiment with this plant-based diet was going to make me break down a lot of my norms and explore this whole new world that kind of put new parameters on what I could imbibe in and finding the good versions of it and why it was important. Yeah, all these things, it was a challenge in itself. There was a little personal challenge in that. And I think a lot of people get caught up in it as a challenge and they see that as a negative. But if you're someone that's at all curious, you can really reframe that for yourself, and that it's a fun exploration. It's going to open the world to a lot of new foods and a new cuisine. And if you like to eat like I do, you get to eat a lot more food in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, like volume wise, it's fun. I can eat whatever I want because it's healthy
Yeah.
and it's good and it's nutritious, and it's not making me, you don't get a food coma. You don't feel sick afterwards. And I really appreciate that about it.
Yeah, overeating on a plant-based diet just increases your metabolic rate, and you
Yeah.
just burn it off, and there's no side effects really.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, especially when you're running 43 miles, that doesn't
Yeah.
hurt either.
Well, and it is like looking at it as a bigger thing. It's an interesting place we sit in right now culturally, where food in a lot of ways it's looked at as this negative thing. Like, oh God, I'm going to eat that. Now I'm going to gain weight, or all these things. There's a big hang up there. There's something we need to explore, and everybody should like interpersonally look at that. Food it's one of the fundamental like aspects of life is, and you need to make sure that the things you're eating are there to nourish you and not break you down. It's a really easy litmus test. Like, everything you look at, you can decide, is that going to be good for me or not? And you got to remember that little things add up to big things, and that can be positive or negative. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the idea, well, it's just one Coca-Cola. And it's like, yeah, that Coca-Cola is one today for this week. And that's a lot of sugar. That's a lot of really bad things you're putting in your body. And then on the other side, for every good thing, it's positively impacting the overall, your bigger self.
Yeah, so true. I mean, people are using food as a reward, and then punishing themselves with exercise. That's the standard, equation is you punish yourself with exercise, or you deserve it, with exercise,
Yeah.
and then you reward yourself with some junk. You said like litmus test. Say that again about like using your relationship with food as like a litmus test for whether it's like nourishing or not.
Yeah, I mean, I just think like I think I don't even think you have to be wildly educated on food. Like, like you can look at things and you can understand. If it's overly processed, it comes out of a box. Like, look, with everything you eat, it's just like, is this going to build me up or break me down? And if it's going to break you down, just stay away from it.
Yes.
And it's hard, I think, in the beginning, because it's one of those things like a plant-based diet. You don't know how good you're going to feel until you do it, or it's like you don't know how bad you might actually feel right now. Like, my energy levels are through the roof. And that's something that you only know once you've explored it. But I stand firmly beside, like, give it a try, and you'll find that a lot of things in your life will get a lot easier. You'll have the energy you need. You won't have those midday just drops in energy. And yeah, there's just so many positive things about it.
Yeah. So back to this run, you went down to Huntington Beach, and you had this crew supporting you along the way. So talk to me about the crew. How did you formulate the crew? How did you get the right people, the right support, the right people to, feed you along the way and put you, have a place to stay along the way? How did that all come together?
Totally. That was one of the harder parts. Was I was shopping for a sponsor. I found my sponsor, and they were great, not a moo. And from there, it was game on. And I was training hard, and I was doing all these things. I was going to leave on March 15th. And right around Christmas, did I realize that a lot of the rest of the parts had not come into line. And it was fine that they hadn't, but it was time that they did. And I was back in Austin with my fiance, and her family is extremely supportive, great people. And they all came together with me and realized I was pretty stressed out. And I was like, well, let's sit down and see how we can all help. And a real key important person throughout all this was my crew chief and nutritionist. She's also my sister-in-law to be. It's my fiance Shelly's sister. She has been plant-based as long as I've known her, and was probably one of the examples that led me to it. And last year, she did the Appalachian Trail on a plant-based diet. So I knew she had all the skills. She's really a whiz on spreadsheets and had some plant-based nutrition certification. Her name's Jackie Howard. And so I, right away, when we sat down at this table, was like, Jackie, what's it going to take to get you on as my crew chief and a nutritionist? And she was on board. She loved the idea of it. And at the time, she had taken a year off of work in order to do the Appalachian Trail. So she was on the back end of that, and it provided the time for her to help me. And as soon as she showed me the spreadsheet of how she broke down my daily caloric intake, I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to be all right. And that was a really big step. So she she was the foundation. She was the one that helped wrap everything up and kept me moving along the way. And then from there, so the starting crew was 4 people. It was her, and then my in-laws to be, Chris and Clara. They're recently retired, and they had the time and space and the resources to help me. So they came on board and agreed to be there for the first 30 days of my journey. So that was the 3. And then throughout all this, we started scheduling people whom would be with me throughout the course of the 75 days. There would be some overlap, new people coming, old people leaving, and then just kept that going. And that was great. That being my fiance, a group of friends, and some other folks, and my mom. But my one concern is I didn't have a consistent crew member, and that was definitely causing me a little bit of anxiety. And it wasn't that I didn't expect everyone to do a great job, but I needed things to stay consistent. And the only way to continue consistency was to have somebody that was just seeing it every day and able to help everybody else to stay within those parameters. And chance meeting. I mentioned earlier that this all kind of came together with this trip down to the Copper Canyon for a run. Well, we went back down there 2 weeks before I started my run across the country for the race again. And it was kind of a last minute inspiration, one last race, and just something that I felt I really wanted to do with this close group of family and friends. We got down there, and Jackie, my crew chief, she ran the marathon distance of the race. There's a marathon and a 50 miler. And while she was out there, there was this guy who saw she was wearing one of our Not-A-Moo caps, and they say plant powered on the back. And this tall, I commented about the hat and how it said plant powered, and he was plant powered. And the next day we ran into him at an internet cafe, and his name was Elliot. And on a 20-minute chance meeting, somehow it got to the point that he was traveling from South America up to, oh, there's my cat, up to, okay.
That's a hey.
Yeah.
I got one outside the other side.
So that chance encounter ended with him saying, well, I'm traveling up from South America, wanting to go to the States. I've never been. And somebody said, well, how about you join us? And he ended up coming on and was my one full-time crew member. We knew each other for 20 minutes before he showed up at Huntington Beach. And we left 48 hours after that. And so, it was a leap of faith on both ends. He didn't know what he was getting into. Maybe could have been the biggest jerk in the world. And I didn't know what he was about. But Elliot, his name's Elliot, and Elliot ended up being so important to me. He put me first constantly. He was there. He woke me up every single morning with a bowl of oatmeal and a cup of coffee and a smiling face. And he probably ran over 1,000 miles with me. He was out there every day and was a big part of my success. So those 4 people made up the initial crew. And then my fiance was able to come out about 2 weeks in, had some friends come out midway as that initial crew left. And then near the end, the initial crew came back out to kind of wrap it up with me. So their job in many ways was much harder than mine. I ran between 12 and 14 hours a day, and they were up an hour to 2 before me, and going to bed an hour or 2 after me. So it was around the clock support. So that they did a lot, and I owe a lot to them. And it was a great experience for all of us. It was trying at times, but we all walked away. From what I understand, everybody had a good time.
Damn, that's very cool. I'm loving how it all really flowed together. It sounds like there was a lot of intuitive kind of universal synchronicities that allowed it to unfold as it did. And it was a lot of fun I found you actually along the way, right when you started, following Rich Roll, like probably however many hundreds of thousands of people out there do. And I think he started with you, and I was like, wow, is this guy for real? Just it was like I think you
hit my watch and
let's go across the country. I was like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Robbie who? And what is he all about? Plan Powered Mission. I'm gonna follow this guy. So I did follow along, and I loved your kind of vlog along the way. And I'm curious, are you going, what's next? Are you going to do anything with this content? I mean, obviously you did raise some awareness. Would you say that it was a success, or how do you measure that? And then what's next? What's from here?
Yeah. Success wise, I feel like it was successful. I had 3 things that were really what I was hoping to get across as I did this. The first one being very, very apparent was the plant-powered mission, and that was to advocate for a plant-based lifestyle as we went across the country creating conversations about better food choices. And we did that. We had so many interactions with people along the way that were profound, and no naysayers, going through small rural areas for 14 states. And people were very open to the idea of cleaning up their diet and making some choices for the better. And we were able to do this because we did, we had this camper and this that was being pulled by a van, and they were wrapped with my sponsors and, talked about the plant powered mission. It was just very colorful and it brought people out. So we had really like, grassroots advocacy going on, and that was so I knew I was hitting those things. And the social media presence, Rich really helped in the beginning to give me an audience, and through that I was getting a lot of feedback from people all over the world, and that feedback and that encouragement took me a long way. But then there were other two things that I hoped to do through this, and one was to get people to move their bodies, and that one seemed pretty inherent, or just that seemed like that was I didn't need to talk about it. Yeah.
That was me. I've always been like 3, 4, 5 mile runner, just kind of when I feel like it. But I'm like that, along with around the same time I moved to Carbondale, Colorado, and I had kind of gotten into a community of people who, I ran like 80 miles over the weekend, whatever. I'm like, who are these people?
Totally.
Is this a sign? So I started running, 10, 12, 15, nothing crazy, but
that's good stuff.
Started pushing myself. So yes, thank you for, showing me that 43 miles is nothing, and I can actually do 10, 15, no problem also.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, was seeing that and getting that type of feedback. It really, it meant a lot to me. And then the third as I was out there, part of it for me was redefining what, it meant for me on a very interpersonal level to be a man. And like, I feel like there's a lot of toxic masculinity wrapped up into food choices for a lot of guys. And I wanted to provide an example of something a little bit different. And so all three of those things that I get feedback about along the way, there was, as far as moving your body, stories like yours, there was a lady who reached out to me, and she was 10 years into being diagnosed with MS. And she had found that walking, moving her body was one of the best things that was helping to alleviate the symptoms. And but she had gotten into a bad habit of not doing it because her husband wasn't there to go for walks with her. He had to work a lot. And through my getting up every day and being vulnerable through my Instagram, it really inspired her that she didn't have a big enough excuse to not be doing it. And so she got back out there, and she was always, keeping in contact with me and telling me about her walks and how much it was benefiting her. And then late in my run, she hit me up telling me that she was going out for a 20-mile walk with her son to celebrate, I don't want to use the word celebrate, but it was the 10-year anniversary of being diagnosed. And that was just big, to have somebody early on that was like, hey, you got me out of bed today and got me to go do this. And then a couple of months later, I did 20 miles. I doubled my distance. And then there's other lady that reached out telling me that she was transitioning her family to a plant-based lifestyle. And she had 2 young sons, and she was using me as an example of how cool it was to be plant-based and how much it meant. It's like everything that I was looking for, I hit it. So yeah, sorry, kind of long-winded on that, but that was definitely all of those. I felt like it was a success. I did hit all of the things I really hoped to. And as far as in the future, we're going to continue to do the plant-powered mission stuff, and whether that be more endurance feats of my own. I've been spending a lot of time on the bicycle just in recovery from the run, and found that I really enjoy it. It's fun.
Riding across.
Yeah, right. I don't know what maybe a distance.
Started in New York and going backwards.
Yeah, right. I don't know if I'm ready to commit to saying that, but I definitely want to get into gravel road racing. Is really interesting to me. It's a really kind of budding up and coming sport, and long rides on gravel roads through Kansas and Oklahoma and places like that. But these races are like, upwards 200-mile races. I just find it to be really intriguing and something I'm interested in. As after I get off of this call with you, I'm going to pack up my bags, and I'm headed out to the UK to help a guy who is going to run across the UK. Meat and potatoes kind of guy, but he saw through my run and through some conversations that the most optimal chance he has at success is to adopt a plant-based diet, at least for this undertaking. And maybe it'll something that'll continue in his life. But he reached out, and one thing led to another, and I'm going to go out there and crew him and run with him some through his run. So things like that, just helping to lift up other plant-based athletes. I really like endurance feats as a way of advocacy. It allows you to to engage with people in a much more, sustainable rate. So you're not shoving stuff down people's throat. You do stuff through example, by leading by example, and slowly the message kind of builds that, wow, this person's doing this monumental feat, and they're doing it plant-based. And you just don't have to. I don't like to preach, so it's a good way for me to pursue the advocacy I want to, and also get to do cool stuff. So
Yeah, I like the metaphor of this endurance movement. It's like, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint,
yeah,
and I think that, I specifically personally, I could learn a thing or two about relating to life in general that way. I like to kind of get things done quick. It's like I've got an idea, I want to do it ASAP. It's like, I'm working with a client. I want them to change their diet or lifestyle now, but I like it's important to remember that, hey, just like live your life, and it's a run across the country. It's not some sort of, sprint across the driveway.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
And that's something that the run itself, like on an interpersonal level, has definitely helped me with a lot.
Yeah.
It's something I've always battled is that anxiety comes through a similar, go, 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 do now, now, now kind of mentality. And I've definitely been able to settle in and understand the long haul a little bit better, and things that would spike my anxiety levels, understanding that it's just it's something that in this instance, in this moment, is something that's affecting me negatively. But if I look at it on in the bigger scope, it's probably going to resolve itself, or with me being aware and having intent, like it will eventually get resolved. So just to calm down and take it day by day.
Yeah, amen to that. So on that note, like in the journey through the 14 states and the 75 days, I know there were some tough times, some tough mornings. I think I tuned into a couple of them, and you, I mean, you just put, like you said, put one foot in front of the other. But what was it? What were some of those toughest days, and like, what was the journey like? It seemed like at some point you kind of found your stride,
Mm-hmm.
like you knew exactly what to expect. But what were the walls, if there were any, that you hit along the way?
Totally. There were walls for sure. I had spoke to a couple people before starting the run who had done this or something similar. It's a small fraternity of people. I mean, first person
Yeah.
did it in 1909. I'm the 330th around there to do it since 1909. So not a lot of people to talk to, but the few I did talk to about it, there was two things that I realized. That one was, if I could get through the first 2 weeks without a show-stopping injury, my body would probably hold up. And the second being that once you get past the first month, your body and your mind had adapted enough to make it just a little bit easier. And those two things ended up ringing true. I did have to battle some injuries early on. It's going to happen when you do something like this. You can't train all the way up to the distance you're going to have to do, or you'll just be too tired when you start. So I was real comfortable with 100-mile weeks, 110-mile weeks, but all of a sudden I went from 100-mile weeks to 315-mile weeks, just at the drop of a hat. So with that, the first thing was about day 7 or 8. Well, okay, the first thing was day 3. Day 3, mentally, things got really weird. I think it was some hormones that started to spike, and my mind just saying, "What are you doing here? Like, what are we doing?" And
At least it sounds like your mind had a little wisdom. What are you doing? Right?
exactly.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So that day was just strange. I've never hallucinated due to running, which is something that you do find happens in really long distances, 100-milers and stuff. You'll hear accounts that I had never experienced it. That day, I definitely experienced some really weird things. Everything got really, the best way I can describe it was like a weird Instagram filter. Like everything, the colors were strange and kind of like the Tokyo filter. It's like dark, black, and white. And then I had a irrational fear of dogs coming out of nowhere to bite me. That was a big part of the theme of that day. And I was overwhelmed by, my senses were just were feeling overwhelmed. Trucks coming by, I would cower. I would like jump off the road. Apparently, again, my friend Elliot, my full-time crew member, just met me, and he said I had just taken on this kind of sadistic laugh and was hopping back and forth across the road over and over, like to avoid something that wasn't there. So that was the first time we encountered what was going to end up being a couple of hurdles. That one wasn't really a hurdle in that I felt like it was going to stop me, but it was just a really strange and something that even if you expect it, once you live it, it's a totally different experience. So that started it off. And then day 7, 8, I had a really long day. So we started this thing off where every day was a different distance. I was doing anything between 28 miles and 60-mile days. And the thought is kind of giving myself big days and giving myself days to recover would be optimal. And on day 8 or so, I did a big day, like 54 miles. And when I finished, the end of the day, I got really tired. It was probably a 16-hour day, but I ended up ghosting out, which is something that kind of happens in ultras where you kind of give up on thinking about what you're doing and your body just takes over. And that was a problematic, scary place for me to get in this run, because when you do that, you can incur injuries.
So ghosting out, it's like your body's going without you in it kind of thing? Like
yeah, zombie mode, ghosting out, kind of just like, yeah. You get so attuned or accustomed to putting one foot in front of the other that you just keep doing that, but your mind's gone. You're just so depleted and tired.
And what are the risks?
I did that, and that is not where I mean, in an ultra, do it. Like, go there, get done, but when your ultra is 75 days and you do that on day 8, you could get injured in a way that you couldn't overcome, and that's what almost happened. I got shin splints, and shin splints, just anyone that's had them, they're torturously painful. But we were able, with my crew being just very aware of me and like helping me to troubleshoot, we ended up realizing that I needed to change the shoes I was wearing. I'd been going from a 0 drop shoe, which is just a really flat sole shoe, to realizing that I needed something where the heel sat higher than the toe and something with a lot of cushion. So I switched into Hoka's, and I changed to ankle socks actually instead of crew socks. Something about the mobility in the ankle. Those two things allowed me to overcome the shin splints within about 3 days, which is interesting. I mean, you don't think of your body able to do stuff like that. The thought is you get shin splints, you're supposed to elevate, ice, and rest until they're gone. And I just didn't have the ability to do that. So we just ran through it, and eventually it went away.
Wow. I mean, I feel like that's a good kind of lesson as well, because I think a lot of people face some sort of hurdle or something, and they, I think you got to balance it. Like right on one hand, it's like you got to listen to your body and take care of yourself, but to realize like, hey, I've got this injury, but I can still run 40, 50 miles a day and heal. Like, that's pretty incredible.
It really is. The body is highly adaptable. These vessels for which we have, that we use through life, it's an amazing machine, and it's meant to be pushed, and we are meant to move, and bodies are meant to adapt, and that's what mine did. And it was a really eye-opening experience, and it's what allowed me to get through what ended up being the biggest hurdle, which then came on day 19. And like I said, we had been fluctuating the distances every day, and this was the point where we decided we could no longer do that. I came in on day 18 and had tendonitis in the other ankle, and it was probably more painful and lowered mobility. I was dragging my leg essentially, and this also came with extreme exhaustion. Up until that point, I had been forcing it. I had just brute force, been forcing every day, and this tendonitis on day 19 hit, and I made it through mile 15 of the day and kind of broke emotionally, mentally, physically. Everything just fell apart. The wheels fell off. I was extremely emotional, crying, very upset on the phone with my fiance, and came into my 15-mile aid station. I was stopping every 5 miles every day. That was a big part of this, and taking on more fuel and more hydration. But I came into mile 15, and my crew insisted that I take a break, that I just was literally dragging my leg. That break ended up being taking the rest of the day off, and then I ended up taking day 20 off, actually. It was the one day I took off in this whole journey, and it was to overcome the exhaustion and the tendonitis that had creeped up. And through that, I learned to let go and to understand that this was not something I could force, and that there was more at play than just me as an individual thinking I could just muscle my way through this. And I had to succumb to the larger energies around me, and whatever that, maybe some type of higher power or something, and just understand to go with the flow. And every day was going to be a new day. There was something that happened there that was kind of spiritual. But coming out of that, day 21, I hit the ground again, and the tendonitis was still a problem, but with an ACE bandage and actually lowering mobility this time, I was able to walk out 40 miles that day. And over the next couple of days, we realized that I needed to do 45 miles a day from then until the completion of the run in order to get it done in 75 days. So that was what we did after that. It was 45 miles a day. So that got me through the biggest hurdle there was day 19. Everything really did fall apart. And then after that, it was smooth sailing for a really long time. I was doing 45 miles a day, so I could tell every day how fast I was going. And I was getting faster and faster. I was getting stronger and stronger. At times, messing around with Elliot, my running mate and buddy, I would drop down to like 6-minute miles, just 6.5-minute miles, just to mess with them. And I never expected that to happen. You know, I was getting stronger. And then we hit the Appalachians and things got hard again. The Appalachians they just don't forgive. It's up or down constantly for like 7 days. That really beat me up again. But then we got out of that, and it was just, you could see the finish line. It was just getting to New York City. So yeah, all in all, you just got to overcome things one day at a time, every day, one day at a time. And an understanding early on that one day being really bad day didn't mean the next day was going to be bad. Every day was different. And that was something you had to rely on a really hard day where you were really pushing yourself and depleted. The understanding that I can wake up tomorrow, and tomorrow might actually just be an easy breezy day. And most of the time that was how it went. It was up one day, down the next.
I like how you kind of just glossed over this day 19 or day 20 kind of spiritual experience. That seems like it was something significant. Is there anything else to share on that note? Because honestly, like, I feel like there's only so much that physical willpower and brute force will carry you. You know, you've got to rely on some exogenous, universal higher power to bring us in this, you know, especially when we're journeying across the continent.
Yeah, you know, I still haven't summed it up completely, but it was just this reality that there, as much as you put forward effort, and you have to have intent, and you have to put forth the effort to do things. Hey, buddy. There is a larger energy at play, and we have to rely on that. You have to be able to be vulnerable and open up to the universe in a way that allows things to transpire as they should. There was no way I was going to be able to force myself. I really wanted to do this in 75 days. But on that day did I realize that wasn't completely up to me. That was up to a lot of factors, and you can, you know, try to pinpoint all those factors, whether it be weather, whether it be another injury, whether it be a problem with the crew or the vehicles that we were using. There was all these things at play that I couldn't control. And there was no sense in me trying to control it. I just had to have faith. I had to have faith that with intent, purpose, and putting one foot in front of the other, we were going to get there. And there was just no need, or it was a futile attempt to try to force it. Like, you got to give in. You got to give in to the universe and allow things to transpire as they will.
Yeah, it sounds like taking that day off was a big thing, because I'm sure you had probably one voice coming through like, no, I can't do that. No, I've got to keep going. But that decision sounds like it was the universal wisdom, so to speak, coming through you, and you were listening. Like honoring the wisdom of your body and just surrendering to that.
Yeah, and it wasn't that black or white, it was a struggle. That day was really hard for me. Like, I thought in giving up in taking that day off, I was giving up. And it wasn't that it was right away, okay, this is the thing to do, I'm going to listen and everything. I laid in bed all day and was, for the first half of the day, tortured by the idea that I wasn't moving my body and moving in a northeastern direction. But yeah, there was an excerpt from, we mentioned earlier, Rich Roll came out in the beginning, who was someone that was inspiration for me. In his book, Finding Ultra, there's a point where he is really being tested when he's doing the Epic 5, his 5 Ironman he did in 7 days, and he floats in the water, and he realizes that he must succumb to the energies around him. And my crew chief, Jackie, she wasn't with us at the time, but she sent me an audio clip from his audio book that was that part of it. And listening to that helped me to let go. It really helped me to define this moment I was in and understand that it was what I had to do. And it was the universe was providing by making me take this day off and having that moment, because there was, at some point, it was going to break. There was no way I was going to make it through 75 days brute force. So even in finding it, that was the universe allowing that to happen. I think that makes any sense. So.
For sure. So beyond Rich Roll as being somewhat of an inspiration, any
Yeah.
other inspirational figures or resources or books or things that kind of helped fuel you, either kind of getting so this decision to run across the country or along the way? Were there any things that you were kind of going to for inspiration?
I think initially, like one of the initial things that got me thinking about a plant-based diet as a runner was Scott Jurek in his book Born to Run, or Eat Run. Sorry, Eat Run. He's in the book Born to Run. But you know, has been vegan for his whole career and has excelled to a degree that not many people have nor ever will be able to trump. Yeah, that book is a big one. It's something, a resource for which gave me the confidence that this diet was something worth pursuing as far as an athlete. One of my sponsors, Anadamu, again, was my main sponsor, but late in the game, I had another organization called Switch for Good come on, and it's an anti-dairy campaign. It's made up of a bunch of plant-based advocates that are really understand how harmful dairy can be to us. And it's headed up by a lady, Dotsie Bosch, and she was a silver medal Olympian in the 2012 Olympics. And she became a mentor and a friend, and her as an example of what was possible. She got her silver medal when she was 39. That's a little late for such a thing, especially in cycling. So her support and believing in me went a long ways. Rich Roll was definitely one. I read a book too prior to making the decision to do this, and I don't think I've really talked about this publicly, but it's a great book. There's not a direct correlation, but it's called A Voyage of Madmen. And it's the story of 6 men who set out to be the first person to circumnavigate the earth on a sailboat solo continuously. And there was something in that book about adventure and doing something of a massive magnitude that resonated with me. And I think it was one of the things that got me in the headspace to want to do something so audacious and big. So those things went a long ways. Those things were big. Yeah, I think that kind of sums up who was my bigger, like, iconic people that helped along the way. And John Joseph,
Right.
Crazy dude, John Joseph, anybody familiar with him? He's a plant-based advocate who was in a punk band called the Cro-Mags, and his support along the way was a lot of fun too.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you have kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like earned your role as being kind of an inspirational figure for people. You know, like you said, there's 303 people who've done this, and now it's like, all right, Robbie did it. You know, I know that's kind of, you know, how I think of you as like, oh, this guy just kind of in 6 years, holy cow, just let's do this thing. So you just are another example of just doing it and putting one foot in front of another and following your intuition and your inspiration, your passions. And yeah, it is inspiring to talk to you.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you as well. And yeah, you know, it's the thing is just my mom growing up, her saying the mantra that I grew up around was, you can do anything you set your mind to. And that really is something that resonated with me over and over in life. And for this experience, no different. We're all capable of so much, you know, there's just so much more in us than we think. And yeah, just tap into that and try to do whatever it is, even if it's just you want to do a 10K around your neighborhood, or it's not even running, whatever it is, get up every day, stretch and do yoga, adopt a better diet. It doesn't have to be 110% plant-based. Every choice you make for the better is better for you, better for the environment. And don't beat yourself up when you make poor decisions, because beating yourself up doesn't do any good at all.
That's some wisdom right there for sure. So Robbie, do you have a website or anything like that is your home base for people to connect with you, or where are you at?
Right now, I'm the most active place is Instagram. I am of the generation. I love my gram. So my Instagram account is just my name. It's Robbie Balenger, Robbie, and then last name is Balenger, Balenger. And then also with my sponsor, Nadamu, we do have a website, plantpoweredmission.com. There is weekly updated blog posts from my run and some that were backdated that I put in about my reasons for doing it. And I am now getting back to a place mentally and emotionally post-run where I'm going to start getting on there again and documenting my training and other things that I'm doing. So check that out. Check out my Instagram account. Those are the places you can see what's going on.
Cool. Did you keep a journal along the way or anything like that?
My Instagram posts were put together by my fiance and my crew chief Jackie, and they were done off of voice memos. I didn't really have the capacity to do them myself until late in the run, so I have this bank of voice memos. I didn't have. I thought I was going to get to write every night, blog, write my own Instagram posts, and I didn't have the energy to lift my hand after I got done every day. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
I
all
could
voice
imagine.
memos. Yeah.
Are you, is there any vision or plan to do anything with that? Or is that for you?
Um, I've been encouraged by a lot of friends and people to maybe think about writing a book. So I am actually going to talk to someone who's going to help me start formulating some ideas for that when I get back from the UK. So maybe I'll do that. Part of me thinks it's time to do that. And part of me thinks that maybe I'm only about halfway through the chapters and I have more things to do before I want to wrap it up. But maybe that's just a second book. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll see.
exactly. Very, very cool. Well, I am happy to know that it is coming into the world because it sounds like your plant-powered mission is certainly not over. It maybe has just begun. So keep it up, my friend.
Well, thank you.
That's
And
awesome.
thanks for reaching out and thanks for having me on. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been great getting to know you and getting to know what has inspired the plant-powered mission and what continues to do so. So thanks again. Peace and love. And until next time.